CNN Travel wrote an article about the Shimanami Kaido, calling it one of the world's most incredible bike routes. Considered to be the most beautiful coastal scenic spot in Japan, the Shimanami Kaido cycling route is something to put on your bucket list if you enjoy cycling. There are lots of YouTube videos about vlogging, about cycling and experiencing the Shimanami Kaido. But there are not many with suggestions about what you might want to know and plan for before cycling the Shimanami Kaido. In this video, I will share 10 points that I think people should know about before attempting to cycle this amazing coastline between 6 islands and crossing 6 massive suspension bridges. I will also add in 2 bonus suggestions at the end. And finally, since I just rode the Shimanami Kaido until yesterday and made a lot of mistakes, at the end of this video, you don't want to miss my take on what I would do differently if I were to ride the Shimanami again. Hi, this is Mike Matsuno, and this is the Man in Japan channel. On this channel, I try to give you my take, usually a unique look at different aspects of Japan, travel trends, and recent news. If you're interested in visiting Japan in the near future, please subscribe and stay updated on what's happening in Japan. Please be forewarned that while cycling the Shimanami Kaido, the flat areas are not so difficult, but the upward inclines to climb to the top where you can take the suspension bridges over to the next island are very tough and grueling. Depending on your bike, your physical shape, stamina, and age, be aware that with all the glitz and videos and photos, it is not as easy as it looks. When I hit the first bridge called Enoshima Bridge from Mukaishima Island to Enoshima Island this past Monday, I felt like I hit a wall, and I had just started. Manage your expectations carefully, and I think it's better to underestimate how far you can cycle. It's much safer than overestimating or just guessing like I did on this last trip. Depending on your bike, it will make a difference. I used the Mamachari, which is a simple standard bike used by most moms, grandmas for shopping, marketing, and going to the neighborhood train station because I wanted a basket and a rack for my 2 panniers, saddlebags. The Mamachari had 3 gears, but it was not easy to go up the inclines to the bridges. Experienced cyclists with high-tech bicycles would not have such a problem, but I definitely did. So choose your bike wisely. The one problem with this is most of the more fancy aerodynamic bikes are not that comfortable and do not have a basket or racks. Then the question is, how will you carry your things, especially if you're going to stay overnight at one of the guest houses or hotels or accommodations? I didn't want to carry anything on my back because I always remember people who cycle telling me that it's not good to cycle with a heavy load on your back. And it also can upset your balance when you're steering. My suggestion would be that if you're not sure which bike, not in too good shape, older in age, or have not biked that much, to use an e-bike, an electric bike. An e-bike's battery should last for 1 full day. And technically, as long as you're not stopping too many places, you can get from Onomichi to Imabari probably at the longest from 8 to 10 hours. And if you're worried along the way of not having enough of a charge in your battery to get to the other end, you can get a partial recharge at Omishima, the cyclist sanctuary rental bike shop, which is about halfway between Onomichi and Imabari. It takes about an hour for a partial charge. But there is an issue with renting e-bikes. They must be returned to the rental shop you rented from at the end of the day. You cannot go overnight as the battery will not last, as well as you will not have a charger with you to recharge the battery. Otherwise, if you return your e-bike at another rental shop, you will forfeit or lose your return deposit because they have to transport the e-bike back to the original rental shop. So if you're not planning to ride the entire 75-kilometer length from Onomichi to Imabari, then plan your cycling itinerary so you can return to the starting point, so you can return the e-bike on the same day to get your return deposit back, which at this time of the making of this video is 5,000 yen. In short, if you are planning to use an e-bike, plan your route for a 1-day plan. Next, be sure to have your accommodations set in advance unless you have your camping gear with you. There are not that many accommodations available along the Shimanami route, and there is no way to know when all the accommodations may be full. For example, on this trip, when I suddenly decided to change my plans because I realized that I could not make it to the end where I had a reservation for a ryokan. I could not find any accommodations on a Monday evening in November, which no one would have expected. So plan carefully. If you try to wing it, you may end up with no place to stay, and if it's cold, it actually could be dangerous. Although I read and also heard on many YouTube videos that there are a lot of shops and convenience stores along the way. I found this not to be true. I saw only one Lawson located in an outlying rural area in Hiroshima during the first half of the ride. So be sure to carry some water and some liquids just to hydrate, just in case. I did find an occasional vending machine in the middle of nowhere or at certain cycling points like the start or the ending of a bridge exit and entrance. But outside of the bridge areas or tourist stop areas like the cyclist sanctuary, finding convenience stores and restaurants seem to be far and few. Also, in regards to food, it was even more infrequent because there were no occasional vending machines for food, and they were also very far and few to find anything to eat or a place to eat at. After you visit larger Japan cities like Tokyo or Osaka or Kyoto, you may think that there will be a 7-Eleven or McDonald's around every corner, but this is definitely not the case on the Shimanami Kaido. The Shimanami Kaido goes through some of the most magnificent coastal scenic spots of Japan. However, much of the riding is done through rural and agricultural Japan, so there will not be many places to buy drinks and food. In short, always carry water and drinks and be sure you have some things to eat just in case you don't find a place to buy something. There are ferries that travel and transport cyclists with their bicycles between some islands and Onomichi and Imabari. So it may be a good idea to have a cycling itinerary that has a backup plan of returning on the ferry just in case you're too tired, you're injured, you cannot return by bike. Also, the weather can change, or after riding in the rain for a long period of time, if it's cold, you may want to return back by ferry. The problem is there's not much English information about the ferry system. Also, it can get confusing because most people do not know the various names of the ports where the ferry stops. There is very little information in clear English, and there are only a few speakers of English along the Shimanani. Compared to Tokyo and Kyoto, you're cycling into a more traditional, older Japan. Much of what you will see is a rare opportunity to see the real Japan. People whose families have lived in the same house and spot for generations, so there is very little English spoken. So it may be a good idea to have a translation app on your iPhone or your Android, just in case. But that is also the beauty of these more remote islands. They continue and preserve the life of rural Japan, the so-called traditional Japan. Next, have a backup plan in the case of rain, because you don't want to cycle in the rain. Just like today, I decided that riding 4 to 5 hours back from Setoda in the cold rain was not something worth doing. And so I returned from Setoda port by ferry this morning. It took only 40 minutes and I was dry, safe, happy, and back home to Onomichi. So I could make this video. The challenge will be if you have accommodations and bicycle reservations. I think you can cancel your bike reservations 1 to 2 days in advance with no charge, but please check on that. The hotels and accommodations are the more tricky part to manage. If you can cancel within 24 hours, you may be able to do that, or maybe you do a bus or ferry trip to certain specific areas instead of a bicycle. Anyway, I suggested this to the Omishima tourist office staff that the Shimanami Kaido businesses need to come up with a different plan for cycling if the weather is bad. I think you have to be creative if it rains, because to me, and I'm not a true cyclist, there is nothing more miserable than cycling to the cold and pelting rain for hours. And one more bonus suggestion: if you plan to make YouTube videos and take a lot of photos along the way of the Shimanami Kaido, it would probably be better to use an e-bike, so you don't have to worry about pedaling and being so exhausted from riding a regular standard bike that you can't take good video and photos because you're too tired. And you'll always be worried if with your stamina and energy you can reach your destination or not. From my experience, what I found was I was so absorbed, I was so overwhelmed by the physical requirements to cycle the Shimanami Kaido that I had no energy left to think about taking good video shots or the time to set them up. So with a standard bike, you end up worrying about 3 major things: your energy and stamina level, your YouTube videos and when and how to take them, and also you have to know where you're going and pay attention to the roads. So it can be very stressful to even think about taking a video when you have to worry about all those other things. So that was also very stressful for me on this trip. One more bonus suggestion: there is a takkyubing service, a delivery service, which will do the same day delivery. For example, if you want to stay overnight along the way and you're using a regular bicycle, not an e-bike because you can't do that, you can have your baggage shipped to the lodging area directly on the same day. If you take it to the hotel front desk or to Yamato Kuroneko, the Takubing delivery service, by 10 a.m. that morning, they will deliver it to certain lodging along the Shimanami Kaido. Not everyone, but you have to make sure that your destination is one of them, and they will deliver it by that evening. So you don't have to carry so much clothes or your belongings. I did that. I Takubing my bag to Setado lodging. It did cost 2,200 yen, but you're paying for the convenience of not having to carry your baggage as well as having the same delivery day service. So that night you can shower and you can have your clothes ready and for the next day of riding again. Finally, if you were to ask me now, after my last 3 days of experience of riding on the Shimanami Kaido, at my age and with my limited physical stamina and energy, what would you do differently? First, I would definitely rent an e-bike. Also, make your bike reservations early because there are not that many e-bikes available. With an e-bike, I would be able to enjoy the trip more and not be so overly tired that I had no energy or motivation to take or set up videos on my cycling trip. Second, I would plan 2 separate one-day trips. One from Onomichi and do the 3 closer islands around Onomichi, and a second from Imabari and visit the 3 closer islands to Imabari. Now, to get from Onomichi to Imabari, you would have to use a bus. That would probably take maybe a half a day, so you might lose part of a day, but then you could still do sightseeing like the Imabari Castle, which is really a nice looking castle, and other things in that area. I would also have all my ferry options for both day trips. For example, the ferry to a specific port, and I would ride back to Onomichi or Imabari. Or reverse, I would ride out to a specific port that has a ferry stop and ride the ferry back to Onomichi or Imabari. And I would manage my expectations and plan for 20 to 25% less of what I thought I could actually do or ride. I would carry some water and food in a backpack. I would try to get an e-bike with a basket, and if there weren't any, I would wear the backpack but keep things as light as possible, especially regarding the cameras and the video equipment. I probably would use an Insta360, an action camera, and maybe my phone. If you found this video helpful and informative, please hit that like button and subscribe. And stay tuned for when my next video about my actual experience on the Shimanami Kaido is uploaded. Coming soon to a computer or cell phone near you. Arigato.